The highly anticipated second season of I Alone Level Up has finally arrived. At the end of last season, Sung successfully transitioned into the Shadow Monarch, and the change brought about more than just a shift in demeanor. His appearance also transformed significantly. Sung, returning from the dungeon, slept until the afternoon, only to be woken by his sister's phone call, reminding him that it was Parent-Teacher Day. Upon seeing her brother, Sung's sister Aoi was stunned, wondering when he had become so handsome. His new charm also caught the attention of female classmates, and even a teacher who wanted to engage more with Sung. The teacher first praised Aoi for her excellent performance at school, and noted that her grades were good enough for medical school. Then, the conversation took a turn, asking Sung if he would let Aoi become a hunter if she awakened one day. Sung immediately answered no, but the teacher asked him to counsel a student who was determined to become a hunter, Rin, who was also Aoi's good friend and previously brought in by Kenta to make up numbers. Sung agreed, but instead of discouraging her, he took Rin to a dungeon entrance. However, they were not there to conquer it, but to observe a large guild's training process. They were at a C-class portal, and surprisingly, there was an A-class hunter, Uehara, who was the captain of the raid team. Uehara was displeased to see Sung and Rin, both E-class, because he was introduced by Director Anne, and now had to ensure their safety. The team consisted of 1 A-class hunter, 5 B-class hunters, and 2 C-class hunters. Sung was disappointed. He had hoped to expose Rin to the harsh realities of dungeon crawling to dissuade her from becoming a hunter, but the team seemed overpowered for that. Unexpectedly, just as they entered the portal, which was initially a blue C-class, it suddenly turned into a red gate. Sung immediately tried to pull Rin out, but the door had already closed. He had no choice but to ask Director An to quickly call for reinforcements. When they opened their eyes again, they were in a snowy field. Uehara, the most experienced, quickly realized the situation was dire. A red portal meant they were in a special dungeon that completely cut off outside communication. The only ways out were to defeat the boss, or wait for the dungeon to go out of control, with no outside intervention possible. Moreover, they would encounter monsters far beyond anticipated levels. As soon as Sung finished speaking, 2 ice arrows hurtled through the air. One struck and killed a C-class team member, while Sung caught the other with one hand, protecting Rin in his arms. Only then did everyone notice the ice sprite in the tree, making a throat-slitting gesture to taunt them. A true white specter. Seeing that the enemy didn't continue to attack, Uehara, the highest rank, quickly took charge of the team. With the situation critical, he ordered everyone to follow his commands to maximize survival chances. He split the group into 2. Higher levels could follow him, and the lower levels could stay and face death. Thus, Sung, Rin, and the remaining C-class hunter were left behind. Unexpectedly, a B-class female team member, Satsuki, volunteered to stay. She had noticed Sung's actions and assessed that his abilities far exceeded an E-class, likely A-class or higher. Uehara took a few B-class members along the main path, while Sung and the others headed into the forest. Uehara's group soon encountered bear tracks and assumed the others wouldn't survive. However, Uehara felt something was off. Despite having B and C-class members, he subconsciously felt as though E-class Sung was the leader. The next second, several polar bears emerged from the woods and surrounded them. After warning his teammates, Uehara raised his shield to block a massive blow from a bear whose paw shattered upon impact. He then swung his axe, cutting a polar bear in half. Meanwhile, Sung led his team deeper into the forest. Satsuki noticed the claw marks, indicating the forest was polar bear territory. They should have left quickly, but Sung insisted on going deeper, saying it was safer to face polar bears than a sentient ice sprite. Satsuki realized he had a point. Concerned about the cold affecting the 2 female members, Sung surprisingly pulled out several cotton jackets from his storage space. Satsuki and the C-class hunter felt they were with the right person. Even higher-level hunters could only summon a few low-level items at best, and they had never seen such subspace magic before. Rin couldn't help but ask who Sung really was. Sung simply patted her head, assuring her that since he brought her in, he would protect her, and he expected the same discretion from the others. Just then, a polar bear appeared. Sung signaled to the others not to worry, and switched his title to Increase Stats by 40% when fighting beast-type magical creatures. Meanwhile, the leader of the White Tiger Guild, Taiga, also arrived at the portal. However, even as an S-class hunter, he could not break through, and could only pin his hopes on A-class hunter Uehara. During this, Director An informed Taiga that Sung was inside and suspected him of being a second awakener. Just then, S-class hunter Masato arrived. who is the older brother of C-class hunter Hayato, previously killed by Sung in the dungeon. Masato had returned to the country to avenge his brother, and unexpectedly found Sung had entered the red portal, leaving it uncertain whether his luck was good or bad. As everyone worried about their survival, Sung had already single-handedly defeated all the polar bears, even leveling up in the process. They even shared grilled bear meat together. Despite defeating many bears, Sung felt he hadn't exercised enough and ventured deeper into the forest alone. This time, he deployed his Shadow Legion to test the waters. While ordinary shadow soldiers couldn't match a polar bear in one-on-one combat, they had infinite numbers and were supported by powerful magical soldiers, leaving Sung quite satisfied with his legion's combat abilities, though it drained his mana quickly. After dealing with all the lesser bears, the alpha bear finally made its appearance, its roar formidable, its claws, sharp as steel nails, easily shattered the shadow soldiers. Sung's mana was quickly depleted, leaving only Jaegerit in the fray. The knight-like Jaegerit, obeying his master's command, slowly approached the Bear King. As the bear lunged, Jaegerit turned ghostly and stabbed through the bear's shoulder. The bear instantly turned and swiped at the airborne Jaegerit, who leapt up and with a crushing force drove his sword into the Bear King's body, slicing open its flesh. Landing swiftly, Jaegerit spun and delivered a sweeping blow, bringing the Bear King to its knees. Still defiant, the bear erupted with electrical energy, but before it could release it, Jaegerit decapitated it with a sword strike. Sung was relieved he hadn't faced Jaegerit in a final duel, but seeing such formidable strength humbly kneeling before him, mixed his feelings with relief. On the other hand, Uhura's situation was dire. Played and toyed with by the malicious ice sprites, he was the only one to survive, but he ended up mentally broken. Kyoya transferred to a southern school and fell in love with a girl from Okinawa in his class at first sight. However, he faced the challenge of a language barrier. Though Natsu, the girl from Okinawa, was always enthusiastic towards him, her fluent Okinawan language often confused Nakamura. It was nothing like what he had seen in comics. Fortunately, they had a mutual friend, Higa, who would help translate for Nakamura during such times. Higa also taught Nakamura some Okinawan phrases now and then. As a token of appreciation, Nakamura bought her a drink, but when Higa took it, they accidentally touched hands, which sparked feelings in her. It turned out that Higa had a crush on Nakamura and taught him the language to find reasons to talk to him. Just as the atmosphere was getting romantic, the clumsy Natsu suddenly appeared, touching Higa's face and commenting in Okinawan that her face was red and hot. Nakamura quickly took note to translate, but Higa immediately stopped him, thankful that Nakamura didn't understand Okinawan. This morning, Nakamura and Natsu went to school together. Natsu excitedly shared a scene she saw on TV yesterday, but Nakamura couldn't understand. He spotted his savior, Higa, ahead, and called out loudly for Higa-san. This caused everyone around them to gather because they all shared the surname, Higa. Nakamura later learned that the surname Higa is very common in Okinawa. He never wanted to experience being surrounded like that again, realizing he needed to be more careful when calling out Higa. Higa was annoyed and suggested that Nakamura could just use her first name. Nakamura then realized why many Okinawans use first names directly. Moreover, Kana was such a cute name. Natsu also thought Nakamura should call her by her first name. Kana, however, kept explaining that it was simply more convenient due to the commonality of the surname, not for any other reason. After school, Nakamura ran into Kana again. He was about to call her Higa-san, but stopped after just one syllable, as others around became alert. Mentally prepared, he called out Kana instead, not noticing Natsu behind him trying to call him. Although people didn't gather around this time, their reactions were even stranger, all blushing and looking at Nakamura. An elderly lady approached him, touched by his romantic gesture, but pointed out that his pronunciation of Kana was incorrect. She had him repeat it, and in Okinawan, that pronunciation meant, "I love you." Unaware, Nakamura ended up publicly confessing his feelings for Kana, repeatedly calling out the name while Kana wished she could hide somewhere. She didn't dare tell him the reason, only asking Nakamura to just call her Kana from then on. Today, Nakamura encountered a lost little boy on the street. While he was at a loss, Natsu and Kana arrived. The boy had not only lost his way but had also fallen and was crying sadly. Natsu held the boy in her arms to comfort him, murmuring something in Okinawan that Nakamura couldn't understand. Higa explained that it was a local method of calling the soul. Sure enough, The boy quickly cheered up and insisted Nakamura help find his mother. Seeing Nakamura struggling to handle the situation, Natsu told the boy that Okinawa isn't very large, so they should be able to find his mother soon. In Okinawan, there isn't a word that exactly matches goodbye, because as long as you are in Okinawa, no matter how far you are, you can always meet again. Natsu's words deeply moved Nakamura. Just as she finished speaking, the boy's mother found them. The boy then told Natsu that he couldn't understand half of what she had said, noting that many young people no longer speak the Okinawan dialect, making Natsu seem like an anomaly among the youth. On their way home, the trio almost bumped into a cow, much to Nakamura's surprise, who, coming from Tokyo, couldn't imagine why there would be a cow on the main road. Natsu explained that it was almost the bullfighting season, and owners were taking their bulls to the beach for special training. Nakamura, still startled, hadn't calmed down yet, so Natsu quickly asked if he needed help calling his soul. Nakamura was excited and anticipative, wondering if his crush would do to him what she did for the little boy. However, Natsu just made him turn around and then vigorously patted his back. Nakamura's high hopes turned into deep disappointment, but the sensation of Natsu's patting lingered on his back, unexpectedly making his heart race more than the cow scare had. Today, Nakamura's classmates found out he had never tried fried egg balls, a specialty snack from Okinawa made from dough mixed with sugar and deep fried. It sounded delicious, and Nakamura remarked that he would love to try them. His classmates immediately perked up, promising to bring him some the next day. As everyone gathered around him, Nakamura thought his luck was finally turning, until Natsu explained that he was experiencing Okinawa's unique kami-kami attack, which is akin to being overfed at grandma's house. This attack happens when locals, proud of their cuisine, learn that a visitor hasn't tried a specific local dish and eagerly want to share it. Everyone said they would bring fried egg balls for Nakamura, except Kana. Natsu asked her why she wasn't participating, especially since fried egg balls were her specialty. In reality, Natsu was just craving them herself and hoped Kana would make some for Nakamura and some for her too. The next morning, Nakamura's desk was piled high with fried egg balls, including a large bag made by Natsu's grandmother. However, Kana hesitated to give him her portion and didn't manage to do so by the end of the school day, regretting her inaction. Unexpectedly, Nakamura appeared behind her, asking why she seemed odd today. Kana mumbled a few words and tried to leave, but Natsu stopped her and started praising Kana's fried egg balls in Okinawan, which Nakamura couldn't understand. Kana saw this as an opportunity, because if she translated Natsu's praises, Nakamura might ask her if she had made some for him too. As Kana was about to translate, she hesitated, then decided to give her fried egg balls directly to Nakamura, wanting to tell him herself that she made them. Nakamura, without overthinking, accepted them, and they shared the snack together. Soon, students from other classes, and even from other schools, began bringing fried egg balls to Nakamura, followed by people from neighboring towns. Having recently arrived in Okinawa, Nakamura was quickly overwhelmed by an avalanche of fried egg balls. To inherit a fortune worth millions, he must first marry the school beauty. How do all the good things end up falling into your lap? Saito and Akane are arch rivals at school. They insult each other, yet they end up sleeping together at night. Who would have thought they'd get married young before even graduating high school? It all started 4 days ago, when Saito and Akane had another argument over a trivial matter in class. Akane's good friend Himari tried to mediate, puzzled why Akane always picked on Saito. This made Akane wonder too, as she seemed to get angry just from seeing Saito. Saito has a sister, Shisei, at school, who always comforts him when he's upset. Realizing this, Himari suddenly asked if Akane's constant nagging was because she cared about Saito. Embarrassed by her friend, Akane blurted out that she would never date Saito, even if he were the last man on Earth. Coincidentally, Saito felt the same. After school, Saito was summoned by his grandfather for tea. Although he disliked his grandfather's authoritarian style, he had no choice since his grandfather controlled the family's finances. During Japan's economic downturn, it was his grandfather who transformed their struggling Hojo group into a world-class IT company. Despite being over 60, he still led the business from the front lines. Unexpectedly, Saito encountered Akane at the meeting, summoned by her grandmother. They started arguing again, but their grandparents were pleased to see them bickering, which reminded them of their own youth. At the dinner table, the couple never stopped talking, which made the elders reminisce about their younger days. Saito, uninterested in stories, asked bluntly what was the matter, only to hear both grandparents say in unison, "You two should get married." Saito and Akane thought they had misheard. Marry their mortal enemy? Was the world ending? It turned out that Saito's grandfather and Akane's grandmother had once been in love but never ended up together, each marrying someone else and living happily for decades. Now, with Saito's grandmother deceased for 10 years and Akane's grandfather also passed away, the elderly couple had reunited. Though they had enjoyed their lives, they still wished they had married from the start. Sadly, they could not turn back time, so they hoped their grandchildren would fulfill this dream. Hearing that she was being forced to marry Saito, Akane nearly cried. In her view, one should marry someone they truly love. Saito was shocked. Was his nemesis really so romantic? Of course, he also refused the marriage proposal. The grandparents were not surprised and revealed their trump card. With a clap, a subordinate brought in a stray dog, indicating that if Saito refused to marry, the Hojo group would be inherited by the dog, effectively cornering Saito. Then, Akane's grandmother pulled her aside and whispered something that softened Akane's stance. They were given 3 days to consider. After leaving the banquet, with tears in her eyes, Akane asked Saito what he planned to do. Saito found her distress quite endearing and asked what her grandmother had told her, but Akane refused to disclose it. Back home, Akane was conflicted. The reason she always opposed Saito was that he always outshone her. How could the second rank ever like the first rank? Unable to decide, she called her friend Himari, telling her about a friend who was being forced to marry someone she disliked due to family reasons, asking what she should do. Himari didn't hesitate to reply that she would refuse because she already had someone she liked and would only marry someone she loved. She didn't tell Akane who that person was. As for Akane's friend, if she didn't have someone she loved, marrying wouldn't really matter. Surprisingly, Akane was more concerned about having to do intimate things if she got married. Himari didn't mind this at all and even encouraged Akane, or rather her friend, to have more children. On the other hand, Saito was also suffering. The thought of marrying such a terrifying woman made him see a dark future. He could only confide in his sister Shisei, who sat on his lap and asked if he wanted to live freely or inherit the company. Naturally, he wanted both, but that wasn't possible. Shisei suggested choosing the company to live a better life first. She reassured him that even if he ended up scavenging for food, she would join him. No matter how difficult Saito's path might be, she would always stand by him. As the siblings were affectionate, Akane made her decision. 3 days later, they met with the grandparents again and unanimously agreed to marry. The elders were very pleased and even demanded they get married immediately. Everything was ready, the new house was prepared, their luggage had been moved in, and the marriage registration was complete. After leaving these instructions, the grandparents drove away. Left with no choice, they went inside to check out the house, which turned out to be quite luxurious. Saito instinctively locked the door, which Akane misinterpreted as him planning to take advantage of her. It wasn't hard to see why she might think that. The house was decorated like it was meant for a honeymoon. The bathroom was pink and plush, complete with a bubble bath. The elders' intentions were clear, and the bedroom had only one bed. Since they were married, sharing a bed seemed obvious. Hearing this from the grandfather, Saito felt uneasy and hurried to check for any hidden cameras in the bed, finding none. Akane was even more panicked, thinking Saito was a pervert who would ignore her protests for his own desires, keeping her up all night and making it impossible for her to go to school. To prevent Saito from getting his way, she carried a sharp pencil for self-defense. However, they still had to unpack. Just as she was about to go upstairs, she slipped and fell back into Saito's arms. The grandfather, showing some conscience, had ordered pizza for them. As Saito was about to eat, he saw Akane drooling over him, but she wasn't about to do something that only couples would do. Saito said they could still eat together even if they weren't a couple, but Akane misheard it as if he wanted to eat her. Saito was speechless and just handed her a slice to take back to her room. But the real problem came at night. They were forced to share the small bed. Despite trying to keep his distance, Saito could still feel the warmth from her back and the scent of her shampoo. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva, fearing he wouldn't last much longer. Akane, feeling vulnerable as the physically weaker one, repeatedly warned Saito not to make a move on her. She had never done anything intimate and had never even had a boyfriend. Fortunately, Saito is also inexperienced. Although their bodies are close, their hearts are far apart. For their own reasons, they must continue this marriage in name only. But Saito suddenly thought of a major problem. What if the grandparents ask them to have children? Akane panicked and curled up, accidentally ending up with Saito's hand on her buttocks. But really, Saito couldn't be blamed. It was just that the bed was too small,